we go. Hey everybody, Randall Cornett here. Hope you guys are having a great day. I actually have a very special guest. So to start you guys off, you guys know that we've been talking about, and you guys can see this on the screen, the AMC filing a request for withdrawal registration statement of the Form S3. So I started digging around on Reddit and I found some really, really great information. I want to give a shout out to True Demon because he's the one that sparked this whole conversation that has led to some really extensive and quality DD. So that being said, I reached out to a gentleman here, and so his name is If It Moves, I Drive It on Reddit. And now, for the sake of the video, I'm probably not going to refer to you as that, so I'm just going to call you Six. Okay,
perfectly fine. Yep, works for me.
And so he's actually contributed a lot with True Demon here to kind of come to a conclusion that I think makes sense to me. And I know from my past videos, a lot of you guys had some questions. So I reached out to him, asked if he'd be willing to come on and kind of chat with us about some of his findings and what his take is on it. So with that being said, we'll jump right into it. So thank you again for coming on and being with us. And if you want to just jump right into kind of like what we're talking about here and what everybody in the audience, kind of wants to know, that would be great.
Certainly. So I think the root of the question is what does this report, this withdrawal request mean for everything that's going on with AMC? The root of it is this particular filing is a request to the SEC, basically saying, hey, can we withdraw this entire offering? And naturally, the SEC has to respond before it takes effect. So what are they asking for them to withdraw? Well, they're asking to withdraw the prospectus and purpose of a 2024 convertible share offering. What that is it's a bond note written to Silver Lake particular fund that would allow them to, Silver Lake gives them money to get through some difficult times. This was back in 2018. Gives them money to get through that time. And in return, Silver Lake receives a contract that if they choose to use it, they can turn that into shares of AMC. Rather common practice in the business finance world as far as being able to help a business you believe in, but you don't want to buy their stock because they're in a real bad space. But if you give them an injection of some cash, they'll be able to do something with it. This original filing was in 2018, and in 2020, during the COVID lockdowns, in July, AMC actually reached back out to Silver Lake and reached a new agreement where they would combine a couple of other vehicles and a couple of other convertible notes into a convertible note due in 2026. So we have the 24s, which Silver Lake turned into AMC in return for some 2026 notes that were functionally the same with a different date. Now, these notes, the 2026 notes, were the ones that Silver Lake was successful in converting during the January run-up. So on the 27th, they called AMC and said, hey, we're going to turn these into shares. And then they went through and sold them during the run-up to some moderate success. I actually did a bit of math on this because I was curious, and I actually took all the shares they had and put them in a calculator just to see how much profit they did secure. Obviously they paid, the equivalent of 600 million for these shares. So what did they get? Over the course of the day, they sold all 44 million shares they had for a total profit of around 112.8 million, which sounds great. Made 112 million. Except if they still had those today, they'd have about 2.06 billion. So I don't know how well of a good play that was. It reminds me of Mudrick a little bit, at least. But so long story short, they exercised that bond. They got their 600,000 back. AMC no longer owes the 2026 bonds to Silver Lake. This report that they filed is them saying, these 2024s still exist and they've never been turned into shares, and we want to get rid of them. but we need to ask the SEC to say, hey, we said these might become shares. Now we want to take that request back. Why is this important? The main reason is there are certain market maker provisions under Regulation SHO that allow for some market makers to use convertible bond shares as shares to short for the purposes of, the usual maintaining market liquidity and ensuring a free and fair market and all the other usual nonsense they claim when they're really shorting us to oblivion. The actual shares never existed. The bond went to Silver Lake. 2 years later, it came back to AMC. And of course, as AMC holds the bonds, they pay their coupon rate, their interest to themselves. So it really doesn't do anything. But it is still on the books because the prospectus, the request to sell these shares, is still on file with the SEC. And in order to undo that, you basically have to tell the SEC, hey, can we cancel this? We never made shares. And then the SEC has to approve it. And then those hypotheticized, synthetic, twice hypotheticated, take your term of choice, those shares are able to be, wiped from existence like they never happened. So what could this mean? Well, to a market maker, if you were relying on those to sell, shorts during the regulation SHO threshold security window, which AMC currently is in, those shares don't exist anymore. Now, they're not by any means all of the potential AMC shares under bonds and other notes, but this is very much a block of shares that has all of a sudden disappeared, which is most likely the reason why AMC waited 3 years, technically, from the time that they could have canceled this offering until now, because now it was advantageous. They're on threshold and they have been for a while. So if any market maker was using this as their basis for those shares, now they're very much on thin ice. They are very much naked, and they are left, hopefully holding a bag, because obviously the threshold securities rule mean that after 13 days of existing in a state of thresholdness with FTDs on the books, they're required to cover. It's mandatory underneath the Reg SHO rules. If they have any FTDs that their timer hits 13 days, that they need to cover those positions. So the summary is this individual filing does nothing. It is in and of itself a request to do something. It's a mother may I. But the ultimate goal of this is to remove hypothetical shares, which would be a bullish action. Obviously, it's very much pro squeeze. It's very much pro AMC. Whether or not you believe Adam Aron is truly working for the shorts, or he's definitely working for the shareholders, and he's definitely working for the company. And this is a good move for the company, because it should mean, as you draw the logical extension out, it should mean that price action drives the price up pretty rapidly.
Now, I have a question for you, and we didn't actually talk about this beforehand, but this just popped in my head. Have you looked at any information about the likelihood of this request being approved in the past for maybe some other securities?
Certainly. I haven't looked at too many other securities, because this is ultimately a rather unusual circumstance.
Right.
The actions taken by AMC in 2018 are the types of actions taken by companies that are struggling, that are genuinely in fundamental trouble.
Backs against the wall
And
kind
in
of thing.
2020, exactly, reconverting things, changing interest rates, because that was the one thing. The 2024 had a coupon rate of 2%, whereas the 2026, I think it was 5 or 6%. So it's a much
Oh, wow.
better for the bond interest rate. And that's probably why Silver Lake said, sure, we'll do it. And there's been discussions with Wes, the lawyer who is dealing with overstock stuff, and other short sale securities, securities dealing with short sellers and naked shorts and everything else. He actually mentioned that this is a common tactic for some funds to offer you a really nice bond package, like, hey, we want to give you some money, and all we ask for is a small bond and some shares. That's all we want. And then they turn around and short the stock to oblivion, and make all of the money you had to pay them. As a bondholder, you are now higher priority than any other shareholder. So if a company goes bankrupt, uh, the bonds get paid first, and then the shareholders get paid second. So in that situation, were AMC to go bankrupt, the bondholders get all the business. They get the name, they get the existing, they get everything, and the shareholders get at pennies and dimes. So that's the ultimate goal of that transaction, is to be, we've got the biggest chunk of the pie. We take everything out of the business, suck it dry, and then the shareholders are left screwed. And naturally, their short positions have then become extremely profitable. So that is the goal on that side of the equation, as Wes mentioned, was happening with not with Overstock, but with other companies he knew of who had been shorted to oblivion by hedge funds. So the ultimate result of most of those cases is, as Wes will tell you, yeah, those companies go under before they have any chance to ask a lawyer for help. It happens so quick, and the federal government moves so slowly that by the time they get a lawyer, by the time they get assistance that they would need to fight this, they're gone. They don't exist anymore. So being able to say, no, we don't need that convertible bond offering, it can just stop existing, it's actually a very rare occurrence, because usually what happens is those bonds, if the company recovers, they get used like Mudrix were. They get used like Silver Lake did in January. They get converted into shares and then they get sold for a profit, because they don't want to wait for the bond. They'll just make money
Right.
now. The Either that occurs or the company goes bankrupt and the shorts win. So finding a successful, being able to close the bond is very difficult. I haven't really found any companies that I could easily cite that have a similar outcome. The one precedent that does exist is that any security that has a pre-existing offering that gets this form filed before its execution date. So if you write an offering and you say, we're going to offer 100,000 shares of XYZ company and it's going to be on July 4th. And obviously this year that can't happen, but let's play hypothetical.
Right.
If you on July 1st file this form saying, oh, actually, we don't want to do that, before it becomes effective, the SEC pretty much does that immediately. It's like, oh yeah, you're pulling it back before it even existed. Sure, no problem. We'll slap you on the wrist for it, but sure, go ahead. There's some fees. You lose some fee processing when you do that. But after the effective date, because obviously the effective date of the sale is ultimately when the bond was given to Silver Lake, so it's back in 2018. Because it's after the date, that's a lot harder to look up and find. And I have not found a company that did that successfully and survived to tell the tale. So
So
I don't know if it would take very long. If the SEC is already watching AMC and GME and they know what's going on and they can really look into this, the fact that I was able to do some DD and kind of dig back, okay, what happened with this particular bond? What was it doing all the way back to when it was issued? And I was able to do that in like an afternoon. So, 2 weeks down the line, the SEC will say, sure.
okay, so I mean that gives me a better understanding. So just to summarize, so AMC basically had taken the notes from 2026 and exchanged them for the ones from 2024 with Silver Lake, which then Silver Lake went, converted those notes into shares, and then sold them in January.
Correct. Yes. So Silver Lake was able to take their convertible shares in January and turn that $600 million investment into $713 million by selling shares,
Okay, and so
plus anything they'd already collected, which I believe they'd had 2 or 3 coupon payments, so they made a little bit on top too.
okay, and then those 26s that are now in question, those 2026 notes are basically becoming a non-factor if should the SEC approve this withdrawal, because then it's like they're finito, right?
The 2024s.
Oh,
So the
so say the
2026s
2024s.
are what yeah, the 26s are what Silver Lake converted. The 24s are
Right.
what were still existent. So yeah, the 24s got when AMC and Silver Lake traded 26 for 24, AMC is holding their 24 bonds now on their books. They've probably ignored them for years because they hold them. so that doesn't really matter.
Right.
Um, so they're probably written off, but the prospectus that allows them to become shares still exists. So there's still that, as we would say, there's that looming threat of dilution because those shares hypothetically exist. Realistically, they don't, although AMC could always have turned around and said, hey, Bank XYZ, we want to give you these 2024 bonds that we wrote back in 2018, and you give us some money. And they could have hypothetically done that. Though by filing this request, they're pretty much saying, we have this bond, we don't need it, we don't want it, make it stop existing.
And
And
just
I
to
would say that's bullish.
Yeah, and so to touch on, so basically, what the original poster on Reddit, True Demon, had said was that basically, look, if those 24s, let's say the AMC does do what you talked about, they go to a bank and they say, hey, we got these these notes, do you want them? Basically, his original DD was making the case that at that point, even if they're on the threshold security list, they can still use those notes to, in essence, short the stock. So that's another thing that's like a fear that we could have had that is just not existent anymore. Correct?
Correct. So there are rules within Reg SHO that allow for shares existing within a convertible bond. Now, that sounds like rehypothecation, and it is. So there are shares within that bond. That bond can be converted into X number of shares. It just so happened that when the 2026s were converted, it was 44 million. I think the actual number is based upon the current price of the stock at the time of execution. There's a whole
Okay.
process. It's based on the dollar value of the bond, not the number of shares per se. But so those shares are hypothetically able to exist. So a market maker, a bona fide market maker, as the term is used by FINRA, can choose to say these are located shares. So shares that are held in a uh, convertible bond already exist. Even if they don't necessarily expect those to be converted, they can be shorted like they're converted. And so a risk there would be XYZ Bank, who bought them from AMC, just gives them to Citadel and says, here, you have these to short. So there is very much a chance for those shares, while they still hypothetically existed, to be shorted against AMC. And that would bypass threshold security restrictions.
So you guys are, so if I mean, that should put it for the audience that is watching. That's to me is as bullish as it can be, right? The fact that, and this is kind of goes into the adage that, if Adam Aaron was really working against us, that would have been a play that he would have, I think that you would have made, right? If you were working against the movement, that would have been like something that you would have jumped right into, right? You would have jumped right into that pool had you been working against us.
Right. And I think what occurred there is that he did the offering to Mudrick, which is a very similar thing. He offered bonds to Mudrick. Mudrick converted them and sold them to the market in one day and made a decent amount of money off of that. But the stock price actually went up as an effect of that. So I don't know how negative that was, but it was ultimately a dilution of shares. And Trey and a bunch of the apes made it adamantly clear to Adam that we don't want dilution. As shareholders, we do not want dilution. We like the number of shares we have. And of course, on June 9th, Adam released the shareholder count. So we now know 80% of the shares are held by individual investors. And it's, no one has more than, I think, was
Yeah.
1%. So if he goes out and everyone likes that and he's like, oh, they like this news. Well, if I decide to go take these convertible bonds and give them to another bank to do the same thing with, yeah, we'll make money, they'll make money, but we're going to tee off our shareholders. So if I'm Adam Aaron or if I'm AMC, I'm like, the last thing I want to do is give someone else the opportunity to dilute that stock. I want to make these go away. And then most likely the reason they waited until now is, well, basically this allows for what I would consider a short trap. So basically you can gamble if AMC's starting to get a little negative, Adam Aaron's getting a little antsy, and you know that this convertible bond exists. If you're a smart hedge fund, you say, hey, Adam, you've got those 2024s, give those to us and we'll give you $600 million, for example. And then that hedge fund can immediately drop those onto the market and drop the share price by throwing 44 million shares onto the market. So basically, it could be a repeat of Mudrick, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be Mudrick. It could be, Citadel, or probably most likely a company that isn't Citadel but is owned by Citadel, and 2 days later we'll figure out it's Citadel.
Consider,
Uh,
yeah, we know how long their web goes.
so exact. Oh, there's any number of names.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Chicago theaters. Who knows? Uh, but so long story short, yeah, they would say, okay, if we don't get rid of these immediately, we don't get rid of these bonds immediately, but we wait to file this until Citadel is like, we can do this thing to Adam. We can say, hey, we want those, and we'll give you money. If we wait until that's possible and their only option, which in a threshold situation, it's one of very few options that a short seller would have if they're up against the wall, like they certainly seem they are. If they're up against that wall, and then Adam says, oh, by the way, you're never getting these because I'm making them not exist. Well, now you've gambled on something that you can't really use. And in many ways, if that is the game here, if that it was a short trap situation, I don't think the original bond was a short trap. Obviously it was given to raise AMC some
So
money.
they were in dire need of it.
But oh, absolutely. In 28, it's interesting to think that in 2017, 2018, AMC desperately needed money. They still had Wanda invested in them at that time, but the original bond, the 2024s, was given to Silver Lake in exchange for a board position. So they did actually get a board member out of this original deal. And so this was like, yeah, we need to save this. We need help. And so they went to Silver Lake back in 2018. So I don't think the original move was intended to trap shorts. I think it was an act of corporate need. I wouldn't say corporate desperation. I would say it was corporate need. Like, this is the smart way to raise money rather than offering more shares, which we have. We have that option. Let's just offer a bond, which doesn't so much directly affect our share price, but gets us some money. But then if we do start succeeding, the company that owns the bond can now get shares in a company that's succeeding. So there are advantages both ways on bond versus additional share offer.
Well, I can't, to be honest with you, I can't see in any party, like because you got to assume both of the parties are going to want to make money, right? So nobody's going to engage in something that they don't feel like is mutually beneficial. I wouldn't do that. I assume that they, like I said, they both stood something to gain there. But I love the idea.
And yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, man.
Oh, no, it's fine. So the ultimate side on that is, yes, for AMC, a bond deal. Let's imagine, for sake of argument, that Silver Lake is attempting to grind AMC into the ground because they're short AMC. I'm not saying they were, but let's imagine. And they offer AMC this bond deal where they will give AMC $600 million in exchange for this bond note, which is, roughly 600 million worth of shares. For AMC, they've got $600 million. It's liquid. They can, pay off rent, pay off debts, do all sorts of stuff with that. So they love having money, and it's a short-term solution. But the long-term consequence for AMC is that they will have to pay those coupon fees to Silver Lake or whoever owns that share, or whoever owns that bond, sorry, until that maturation date, which was 2024 originally. Now, if I'm Silver Lake, I'm giving a lot of money to this company. But in return, I've got an ongoing payment every either month, quarter, whatever the term is for the coupon.
Right.
I've got an ongoing payment coming in from them. That's a reasonably good interest rate that I set, about 2%. And if they go under, well, I've got a short position in them. So if they go to zero, I'm the biggest bondholder. I get the whole company. So it's win-win. But it's a short-term win for AMC. They get out of their immediate problems, but it's really more of a long-term win for the other side of the deal. And both sides know that going in, but the short sale side of Silver Lake's position is kind of the underhanded, stab in the back that they can do and still make money.
Well, like we talked about, they're just, these guys, they're going to try and work both sides of the field. And right. I think that's just how they operate.
That's why they call them hedge funds.
Yeah. So this is really great stuff, and like I said, I appreciate, and I know that this is going to bring some clarity because I had tons of questions on this. So it's really, really good. I know we did
Of
touch. I
course.
mean, I have to be honest with you guys. I was just looking through, and we were just kind of talking, Six and I, about this data that he's got. I mean, to me, it almost looked like this gentleman's built pretty much his own Bloomberg terminal on his own. I mean, he's got so much information. Literally, my brain was melting when I was looking at it. Um, so we have covered that, and I think that's a really good explanation. I guess before we move on, is there anything else that you'd like to add that you think that it would be important that people might question?
So I think the thing to take home from this bond information change is that it doesn't mean anything today. It doesn't mean anything tomorrow. It doesn't mean anything for any particular date yet, because ultimately the time schedule of this bond issue disappearing is dependent upon the SEC. It's dependent upon them investigating, making sure, yes, you really have not issued any shares with regards to that bond, so you can make these, this prospectus disappear. So there is a level of uncertainty as far as a time scale, or as a, don't give dates, as we love to say.
Yeah, so we got to
Um,
expect that they wouldn't file it though if they, unless they knew that they were gonna, or if they were gonna get called on that they were gonna be in a position to make good on it, right? I would assume that you wouldn't file it
exactly.
anyways.
Yeah, I think that there is that's the part about this that's interesting, is that, as we've discussed, those bonds, those original bonds, were dealt with in 2020, back in July of 2020. Silver Lake converted them to the new version and then profited on the new version back in January. So this was done back in 2020. So why now? Why almost a year after the conversion was done would you file for the prospectus cancellation for the, the RW form now? And I do think that this was a bit of intelligent play on the part of AMC, and on part of the certainly the legal team of AMC, being like, hey, wait a second. If they're going to try this one thing they can try on threshold, we can catch them with this. And we can make them sweat. So I think that there was a level of timing involved. And I think that, assuming that this was just, it just happened to be today. No, they picked for that to come out this week, or, Friday. They wanted that to come out after they had been on threshold for a while, and it was very clear that, something was going on as far as threshold securities and short sale. So overall, it's bullish, but slightly. And I think the ultimate rule here is buy and hodl. It keeps working.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that it's the
it
most simple strategy. How ironic is that? It's like we're going against all
oh,
this
absolutely.
crazy backdoor stuff. Like you said, they're, shorting notes and they're doing all these things. We're talking about, short exempt lists. We're talking about all these different things when it comes to just a magnitude of different subjects where it's just basically more, for lack of a better term, bullshit after bullshit after bullshit. And the most simple thing is the thing that's going to bring these guys down, which is just buying and holding. And so to me, it's kind of it's kind of a funny crux because it's just the most simple thing.
Absolutely. It's that line that we've been told by the boomers traditionally is, you find a company you trust, you value, and you hold on to it. And now that we're doing that, they're telling us we're the crazy ones and that we should invest in these other stocks that are doing far better. And we're like, but we don't know those. We know this one. We like this stock and we want to stay in it. I think the Warren Buffett quote applies very well here, that the stock market is a beautiful vehicle for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. And I think in many ways, buy and hold is patience. And in this case, the shorts that are having to panic and pay these interest fees and pay do all this crazy hypothecation, all this crazy stuff, they're the ones who are impatient because they have a deadline. You can hold a stock all day long. You can hold a stock until the company goes into the ground if you wanted to. I wouldn't, but you could. You can hold until the very end. If you're shorting it, you have to keep paying.
I love it, man. So, like I said, you've given an absolute, I mean, a treasure chest full of data. And in fact, I think now I'm just kind of sparking some ideas, but I actually think that there might be some free time, and I don't want to commit you to this already, but I think there's a couple other subjects that I would love your insight on that might serve for
Of
some
course.
other videos. just because there's a lot of questions that I think that you'll be able to answer. So use this time right now as a shameless plug. Like, where can people find you? I know that you said that you're most responsive on Reddit, but you did mention you do have a YouTube channel. Do you want to go ahead and shout that out?
Absolutely. So yes, as mentioned, I am If It Moves, I drive it on Reddit r/AMC stock. You can find me on True Demons DD, as well as I am on YouTube. It's Vigilant Watch. Link will be in the description, I'm certain,
Yep,
or perhaps maybe a card will be up there. Uh,
definitely.
but either way, I am on YouTube. If you reach out to me on Reddit, I typically respond to chats. I'm not a huge social media guy. My Reddit is primarily a lurking account, and I was working with True Demon on this particular DD, and he posted it, and I thought he was going to post it like to the group before he posted it public, and then it went public, and I'm like, we should amend that a little bit.
Well,
And in addition, yeah, so I do have Twitter and I have all the others. I don't have Facebook, I don't have Instagram, I don't have a SoundCloud. But yeah, so YouTube, obviously the icon right there, oops, right there, is the same one on my channel. I'm not super frequent on stream, but I do maintain the ability to go live and to record data. But I absolutely prefer these types of conversations where I can sit with someone and we can have the discussion. Uh, though I did kind of monologue most of it, I prefer the ability to have that prompting and that discussion, which really does inspire that appropriate response to questions. So reach out to me. As you know, when you reach out to me on Reddit chat, I will give you nice and detailed responses that will fill the chat window very quickly.
and he definitely will. And like I said, it'll be welcome too. And I have to highlight something just, well, I guess while we're on it, because we're talking about True Demon and we're talking about this DD. And I just want to highlight how valuable it is to have a group effort collectively, because you'll see, and I'm not doing this to highlight where True Demon is wrong, but more or less to highlight collectively as a group how we can come to solutions. And I think that that's something that is the most important factor in our movement, is the fact that we're dynamic, we move quick, we move fast, and the information as collectively we will get to the bottom of it. So I really appreciate it, and I
Absolutely.
know the audience is going to appreciate it as well. So again, I'm pretty sure, like, I promise you I'm going to hit you up. Now, whether you accept it and you come on again or not, I don't know, but I definitely will be hitting you up, and we can discuss some other topics that are of interest, because I know that you will provide some really good insight there. So with that being said, we will end the
Definitely.
recording. This is a half-an-hour video. Thank you so much for the jam-packed information. It was really great. And make sure you guys go and follow him on Reddit and follow him on YouTube. And any last things?
Yeah, absolutely. Buy and hold. I can also be found frequently in the chat room of Matt Kors. I typically watch him during the week. Obviously, I watch Trey as well. Obviously, I'm glad that his all of his surgeries went well today, because of course it is the 30th as we record this for another hour and 40 minutes. So obviously I'm glad that Trey made it out. We all love to share that, though unfortunately I don't have a Subway cup. I go to DQ. Not a plug, not sponsored. But
Back
the
to the
main reason I like
grass.
DQ, it's a Warren Buffett company. So if Warren Buffett likes DQ, I guess I must too.
And you said the tendies were good. I'm gonna have to go try them. I haven't had them from
Oh
DQ
yeah,
yet. All right,
definitely.
guys. Well, I hope that you got some information from this, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Take care.